Hey, what's up, guys? It's Jace, and welcome to another exciting episode of the ELAV8 podcast. Today, Sam and I are rejoined by mad scientist Chris Fenwick, who showcases his amazing remote editing process.
I contend that there is an enormous amount of information that I can garner from your nonverbal communication as you're watching down a timeline. And the way I work, you're looking at your computer screen that has a camera on it. And I get to watch you watch the timeline.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the ELAV8 podcast. Basically, this week is happening, I think, for two reasons. There's the reason that Chris Fenwick gave me, which was that he wanted to come back on because of what we did after the show wrapped last time. But what I actually really think it was is he somehow knew that we were going to have Alex Gollner on this past week. And he wants to play the game that I used to play with him on Final Cut Grill. And he needed to become the most frequent guest of the ELAV8 podcast and stay ahead of Alex Gollner. So well done. It literally took a week, Chris, and you are now back in front of Alex Gollner. And I feel like it's very appropriate that we have you on. So well done pretending to have an excuse to have a follow-up.
That would be me. That would be
Oh,
me. I'm just going to have an open invitation to invite me on every time you've had Gollner on.
We have
So
a
we should
running
just
joke.
we should just automatically schedule it every
Just put
time.
them in pairs. Yeah. Fenwick, Gollner.
Sounds
All right.
good.
All right. So it sounds like immediately because Alex already has his second leg. He already planted the seed for his next version. So it sounds like once Gollner comes back on, we need to immediately find a reason for you to be on, Chris, to get into immediately afterwards.
I'm game.
Just
I'm
to
game.
tweak him.
We'll figure
right.
something out.
Well,
Okay,
if my prediction
so-
comes true, true, and Final Cut does release on June 10th, we might have a bigger quorum. It might be bigger than just the three of us. So
Do you guys
Who
have the
knows?
ability to do four? Maybe Gollner and I can both be on and we can hash it out.
And
I think
then
we have
literally you
5.
can stay in front of him as he comes back on. Well played, Chris.
That's the plan.
This is
No,
like
so-
the Lakers and Celtics.
After we did this little show, oh, by the way, speaking of Lakers and Celtics, I saw this. I'm not a big sports fan at all, but I saw this thing where somebody asked Michael Jordan, "Do you think that the Jordan era Chicago team could beat the current era Lakers?" And he goes, "Yeah, we'd probably beat them by 2 points." And they said 2 points, and he goes, "Well, most of us are nearly 60 years old now."
Oh, there it
He's
is.
talking about could we still beat them even today if we were to suit up? Anyway, so last time we had this, we did the little chit chat, and at the end of it, something came up, and I showed you. I started to show you how I work, and Sam's like, "You're holding out. Why wasn't this the show?" And so that's why we're back. And I want to talk about editing in the 21st century as opposed to editing in the past. Because my argument, and I think I mentioned this to Jace the other day, is that in actuality, I think the way that I work now is far superior to any way we used to work when we used to sit in the same room. I would rather work remotely via, I use Zoom, than I would if you were sitting in the room with me. And I want to explain why.
Oh yeah, I'm really curious.
And to set the stage for that too, there's a few aspects to this, right? So I think why this is better, first off, is, way back in the day, we used to talk about, the idea of a remote client and how do you manage between different platforms and these various things. What Chris was showing me basically is a modern day command center with a variety of different monitors and patch bays and all of this stuff. And I was looking at this and I was like, oh, this is the perfect setup for somebody who has clients of all types all around the world and also might be running live streaming and variety of other things. And it's different. It's a different setup than I've seen previously. And he's been buried in the office hours world for the last few years. And I have a feeling that that was his beta testing for what he's going to show us here. So with that intro, Chris, go ahead and drive and blow our minds.
Okay, so yeah, office hours definitely helped me polish what I do. It works much better today than it did when I first started doing remote editing. What I wanted to show you first is, this is the way we all used to work. Nice classic edit suite, little couch in the back for the producers. They sit back there with their little laptops on their lap doing God knows what. I have no idea what they do back there, but they'd clickety click click, and they'd always be talking on the phone when you're trying to glue two words together, and they can't see your desktop, but they could see the program monitor over your shoulder, over your head, and they felt like they were, a part of the edit. As an editor, you have these creepy people sitting behind you, and you can't, in order to talk to them, you have to, turn around and you have to talk to them. And it's this whole thing, and it takes you out of your headspace. And when you're playing something back and you're watching something closely, I can't see you because you're sitting behind me. And I contend that there is an enormous amount of information that I can garner from your nonverbal communication as you're watching down a timeline. And the way I work, you're looking at your computer screen that has a camera on it. And I get to watch you watch the timeline. And that to me is basically invaluable. As a matter of fact, about roughly 20 years ago, 20 years ago, at one of the places I worked, I talked the owner into letting me turn the console 90 degrees in the edit suite so that I looked, this way. And instead of you sitting behind me, you were sitting off to my shoulder. So I could sit back and sort of spy on you. And unfortunately, the other editors in the building thought I was insane. So they made me turn it back after about a week. But it was a step in the right direction. And so when we talk about remote editing these days, we're talking mostly about what I call asynchronous reviews. And asynchronous reviews is basically frame IO. I'm going to edit some stuff. I'm going to put it on frame. You're going to watch it when you get around to it. You're going to then try to put into letters and paragraphs and sentences your displeasure with something. And then I have to read those words and try and understand what you actually meant by those words, because words fail us. And then I have to try and execute on your requests. This is a necessary way of working until now, but it horribly inefficient. It's very efficient from the client standpoint because they get to respond when they have the time to respond. But in terms of working efficiently and saving money, I can't tell you how many times I've read a comment and known exactly what the person means. It's usually, like playing telephone. Like, I don't know what he means by these words. These words are failing us. So what I'd rather do is work like the way we used to work, where I could hit play and you could go, I don't like that. Stop, hit the space bar. What do you not like? That's dumb. Okay, let's fix it. And working in a real-time fashion is just far superior. And the way we do it now is by taking, right now I'm talking to you on Riverside. This could be Zoom or Teams or whatever. And I can show you my face, but by pushing one button, I can show you my screen. And it doesn't have to be this slide deck. It can be my timeline, okay? And now I'm playing my timeline in real time. And there's there's three main things that you have to be able to do to edit. You got to be able to talk. We're doing that. Riverside helps us do that. Zoom helps us do that. But you have to be able to see what I'm doing. And that's by hitting one button over here, I can show you what I'm doing. And then you have to be able to hear the timeline. And as it turns out, the hearing the timeline is probably the most difficult piece of the puzzle. Now, you can, a lot of people use Zoom. We're not using it now, but Zoom and most of the, I think all the things have the ability to share a screen. And that works okay, except for the screen sharing features of all of the teleconferencing apps favor resolution over frame rate. Because I'm probably showing you a big giant 4K display. In my case, it's a 5K display. And they're thinking, well, it's got to have a lot of small text on it. Got to have good resolution. But the problem with that is when you share your screen via Zoom, it favors resolution over frame rate. And when I hit play, you're seeing like 5 frames a second or something like that. It's really bad. Most of the video conferencing tools work really good with a camera. My motion is pretty smooth here. And that's because it's favoring the frame rate over the resolution. So if I can take my screen and dumb it down into making the computer thinking it's a web camera, I get frame rate all of a sudden. And so you do that by not using the screen sharing tool. I'm not going to use the Riverside frame sharing, screen sharing tool. I am just
basically
cutting using a switcher.
You pin yourself as the host essentially, and then you're going to make yourself full screen, and then you're just going to give them the camera.
So one of the downsides of all of these systems is in the user has a certain amount of control. Now, in Zoom, I believe I can like spotlight myself, so I sort of take over the screen. But you can pin me locally. Pinning is a local command. Spotlight is a command that you push out to the users. So if you pin me, boop, boop, it's going to fill up the screen, and you're going to get a little Band-Aid of little heads for everybody else involved in the edit. I will also say this, the other nice thing about working with Zoom, I've done edits where I have, 5 shareholders chiming in because they're all sitting there in the edit. And I could see them all if they turn on their camera. I could see them and I can, converse with them. So you can have multiple people coming in, and there's many times where people just log on. A lot of times if I'm on an ongoing edit, I just publish a room that's available for any of the shareholders to drop in and drop out at any time during the day. It's just a 10-hour Zoom room that's playing all day long, okay? And they can pop in and double check on how something's going. Hey, did you get my note about changing the back end? Yeah, we're working on it right now. Do you want to see what we've done? Yeah, I'd like to see it. Can you play? Boom, hit play. And they get immediate feedback on the things that they've asked for.
So let me see if I've got this.
And then they go, hey, I have a meeting I have to go to. I'll be back in an hour. Okay, bye.
So let me see if I've got this, right? So basically what it is, the modern way to do real world review sessions is you're going to start off in a Zoom. Everybody's got a camera and they're going to like do their thing, and you're going to have a conversation normally. And then when you start getting into the review mode, you, Chris, are going to have everyone pin you, basically, and then you're going to share out, you're going to change your camera, you're going to swap that over, basically, to a feed from your timeline, perhaps go full screen on that, and then it's going to play out, and because you've changed your camera feed and not shared your screen, you're going to be able to match resolution the way you normally would from your output, so you get real-time playback versus the laggy, stuttery frame that people typically are trying to share out.
Exactly. So now there's some things that are pretty cool here. Let me just see if this. Okay, so here's a camera. So here's my edit system right here. Okay, this is a Mac Studio. Actually, let me see. I'm going to try and there, that helps a little. Okay, so there's a Mac Studio. There is my user interface, okay? And then up here, I have this is all backwards. So that's the same display mirrored that goes into my ATEM switcher. And all the ATEM switcher is doing is turning my HDMI into Jace, you might be able to help me. There's a 3-letter acronym like Universal Video UVC or something like that, or I don't know what it's called. I have no idea. But anyway, it changes it into a webcam. Okay, the output of the ATEM is, hey, I'm a webcam. So anything you plug into the ATEM is, hey, I'm a webcam. And guess what? Riverside takes webcams.
So, quick question for our viewers: what type of ATEM do you have?
Okay, it doesn't matter. But I'm using the ATEM Extreme ISO, and I'm only using it because I have this spread out over multiple computers. You don't need to, but there's some advantages to it. Now, I'm going to try, can I swap let me go camera. That would turn my camera off. I'm trying to see, is there a way that I can flip my display? Because right now it's in the mirrored mode, but I don't see.
Let me see. I think I can. It shows up. It shows up correct for us, by the way. So I guess the next question I have. So you're running your ATEM into another device, correct?
Okay. So the actual thing, and I'm going to come back over here. The actual thing that's allowing me to change angles is this. It's a Stream Deck.
Oh yeah, the Stream Decks are awesome.
Okay. Now the Stream Deck. Across the bottom here, I have multiple feeds. This one is the output of my camera. This is the output of my editor. This button over here, that's my actual webcam. And all of those are just inputs into the Stream Deck. I'm actually using, technically it's not inputs into the Stream Deck. It's inputs into OBS, which stands for something. OBS is a digital video switcher, okay? And the advantage of OBS is that, one, free, can't beat the price, and two, it has the ability to bring in all kinds of different video sources. One type of video source it brings in is my webcam, okay? Another video source it brings in is the continuity camera from my iPhone, and that's why I can just pick up my iPhone and say, look, here's my Stream Deck. Okay, I'm just holding my iPhone here, and I'm holding my iPhone just like that. See, there's my iPhone, there's the cam I'm working with. I'm not actually using this camera now. And then
can you get us a wide of your whole setup? Can you just actually go, can we see what the whole thing looks like?
Sure.
Let's get out wide here. So you're running off a Mac Studio. You have a laptop to the side. You've got a vertical monitor, 2 core monitors. What are the monitors? Yeah, go ahead.
Let's go left to right. So on the far left is the secondary display to my Mac Studio, and to the right of that is the main display of the Mac Studio. Okay. Above that is my Zoom ISO machine, which is currently not plugged in. And moving down and also to the left, there's the vertical display. That's what I do all of my web streaming on. And then the laptop is attached to the vertical display. And then the upper right monitor is currently not plugged into anything either. Okay.
Okay.
So that's how I run everything. Now, I pick my pictures here. I pick what source I'm sending out to you on the Stream Deck, and then the audio is a bit more involved. It's the harder part of the equation.
And what's the camera you're using right now? Sorry.
The one that I'm holding?
Yeah.
It's an iPhone 14.
So you got the iPhone running as one of your Stream Deck options.
It's an option into OBS. The Stream Deck is just a remote control, so you don't have to go click on OBS.
But bottom line is you're running your iPhone as one of your streams, right? Through the whole
That is correct.
environment.
Yeah, it's something I can just grab, hit it, show somebody something physical.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And
I have a couple questions. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Because your
Question time.
eye line is like pretty good, right? Whenever
It's
you're
pretty
looking.
bad.
Well, I mean, you're
That-
looking
that-
directly at me right now. So how are you doing that? Are you looking directly down the barrel right now and not seeing the screen?
I'm looking at a camera lens. I don't see
Okay.
the screens. The screens are in my peripheral. That's just training.
Okay, got it.
If I really wanted to, I would put the web camera right above the lens, the main display, possibly. Or, a lot of people set up teleprompters for their webcams.
I was going to say you should check out the Elgato teleprompter
Yeah, the
because now it
Elgato's
has
pretty
the
good.
ability to. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
cast video on top of it now.
Great tool. If I have good eye line, it's just training. Quite frankly, and I've said this many times, I'm much more fascinated watching me than you. So a lot of times when I'm looking off camera, I'm just checking out myself. But when I'm editing, you'd see this because I'm looking at the display to the left of the lens. Okay.
Got it.
So first we solve how do I show you what I show you in a way that's functional. So if I go back to showing you my screen and I hit play, it's gonna wake up a hard drive here. Okay, so there we go. And that's a handheld camera. Also, by the way, I think this is actually my iPhone. Based on the blue in the sky, I'm going to say yes. And this is me just doing a tour around the tent of my truck. Now, it's smooth, right? You're seeing that smoothly because you're seeing the full frame rate capability that Riverside has. Now, I don't know what the Riverside capabilities are, but I will say this, that when I use Zoom, we actually have pro level Zoom accounts that give us the ability to do 1080p and usually around 30-ish frames per second. Okay. Full frame rate, whatever it is. It might be 25. I can't remember, but it's a lot of frames. It's smoothish and much smoother than the frame capture. And most importantly, it's 1080p. And all the ATEM switchers. So I'm taking the output of my 5K. Here's an important thing. And I'm sorry, this is a little scattered. So I edit at 5K on a 5K display. The Macintosh has to have the ability to output to 1080p to the ATEM. Well, how do you do that, Fenwick? This is something that I literally just learned like a year ago. The Macintosh has the ability to mirror a display and have both displays be different resolution.
When did that happen?
So
Yeah, that's new.
I don't know. They tell me they've been able to do it for a long time. So if I look at the actually, can I do this?
No, because it literally used to change your screen so that like it would
it doesn't do that.
Button.
Yeah, it doesn't do that. So
Wow.
So I take my primary display, I mirror it to another cable that goes into the ATEM, and on that one I say, yeah, just make this 1080p. And it goes, and the OS is scaling down a 5K display.
Now, another
down
question
to
I have
1080p.
Are you running things through an audio interface or is it all just through Mac Audio?
So I could talk easily for an hour just about the audio.
Okay.
And I will tell you this. There are
I've run into
many
more
ways-
problems with syncing, keeping these things in sync and managing that depending on what devices
Right.
you're using.
So let's come back to syncing and color
Okay.
a little bit later. But I will tell you this, that your objective as you design your system, your objective should be to do this with as few physical boxes and wires as possible. Primarily, you don't want to pull any audio out of the computer. You don't want to run it through some stuff, and you don't want to run it back into the computer. Okay? Now, the closest I do to that is my audio and video from the studio comes out via the HDMI into the ATEM, but the ATEM is actually plugged into the laptop, and it becomes a source in Zoom, or today, Riverside, okay? Because it goes through my audio subsystem. Now, I'm going to touch briefly on what I do with the audio, but I'm also going to say that if you go to officehours.global YouTube channel, there is an episode. First, there's an 11-minute episode video of Fenwick, that's me, explaining basically roughly how my audio system works. And then there's also a 1-hour tutorial where I walk Alex Lindsay through building my audio subsystem from the ground up. Okay? And it takes an hour. It takes an hour. It's not insignificant, but it's a journey worth making, because once you have it, it's really good. Now, I'll tell you, I didn't actually show you this earlier, but I'm gonna go back to the display and I'm gonna hit play. And when I do, I'm gonna be able to hear it because I have a fader. Hold on. But you don't hear it because I'm not feeding it to you.
And it does.
And now I'm feeding it to you.
But as we started installing it and playing with the supply,
here is why you hear it. You don't hear it.
These are super
You do hear
handy to use as tie-off
And this
points
is how
for
I
my
hear it.
OBS 270.
And if I pull this down, we both lose it.
This is really
You hear it
nice.
because
Can
this
do a little
fader is
tie-up
out.
job here.
And now I can pull this down and you don't hear it. And the beauty of that is I can actually be on a call with you and I can edit while you don't hear it. I could be fiddling with little tiny detail-y things that you don't have to hear. I also have the ability to like audition a cut of music, say out of YouTube or QuickTime, and play it in, and I have a separate fader for every app. So I can adjust my QuickTime volume separately from my Final Cut volume.
So, quick question on that. Does that mean within OBS you're mapping each audio source to a particular window?
I think I'm going to say no, because I'm not sure I understand your question. So no, you're not doing that. All the audio comes through separately. So let me do the briefest of overviews of how the audio works, okay? And I'm going to make this, I'm going to do this really fast.
And then I'm going to ask you clarifying questions because I'm not going to understand.
Okay, not a problem. So in essence, I use two applications to make the audio work.
Yeah, I know Loopback.
You use Loopback and you use a thing called SoundDesk. Now, SoundDesk is my audio mixer, and it looks about like this. Okay, there's SoundDesk, and my little painted faders here control things there. See that?
So your mixer is connected into.
And this is not a mixer. This is just a MIDI controller. This is the mixer. This is just a MIDI controller.
So this is just the hardware interface, so you can use that.
No, I wouldn't even call it a hardware interface. Okay. It's a MIDI, it's a controller. No sound goes through that mixer. It's just a remote control. It's a fancy mouse, okay?
All right.
And keeping everything, what Pro Tools people call it, in the box. Oh, we're mixing in the box, meaning it's all in the computer. And so it's important to keep it in the box because you're going to avoid a lot of sync issues, but by keeping it as close to the source as possible. So Loopback allows me to pull audio from individual apps and then feed them into SoundDesk so that they can be controlled by the controller.
Okay.
And then that way I have and then I also make an aux feed, a sub mix, which is on that red fader. And that's what I'm actually sending out to you guys. Now I have the ability to listen to Zoom, to my web browser. I have the ability we use Unity comms when we do live shows. So I can pan that into one ear. So I could be talking to you and somebody can be talking to me in my ear here going, hey, let's wrap this up. Right? Very cool. But anyway, all that's done in the box. Now, the reason
so we're pretty much, just to clarify real quick, we're probably past the point then, it seems like, where you need a Blackmagic or AJA box for a setup at this point.
Well, they make some nice boxes. I'm not using any. The only IO box that I'm using is it's a very fancy mic pre, which makes this microphone sound really good. But really, it could be almost any mic pre, and it's just a way to get the microphone into the system. Okay. But
for the most part, you don't. But you could probably even run that through something else at this point. I guess what I'm saying is, why have these other things that can cause conflicts or sync issues when you can just literally use these two programs to pretty much run everything?
So I'm old. I come from a world where you ran a cable from a thing to another thing, and then you faded up a knob over here, and you could hear the thing. And there's a lot of comfort in that. There's a lot of reliability in that because I can see the cable running across my desk.
Well, you'd still use cables. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you're still going to use cables. The only difference is your new interface is a USB-C connection going into either a dock or the computer itself, depending on how many Thunderbolt ports you have, right? Because you can run pretty much XLR to any kind of adapter. Then that's going to show up in your Mac and your system, which would then be eligible for some sort of accessory.
Once you get audio into the Mac, it never has to leave the Mac again. Okay?
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
So the Mac is your mixer. Because, the paradigm, I think, sorry I keep fixating on this, but fine. This is a shift in my world, right? Because I'm used to having to run either a 5.1 mix or a sync out through a Blackmagic or AJA box, which then screws everything up if you're trying to keep that in sync with what's on your Mac. And then rerouting that back in to run through a Zoom is an exercise in frustration. And whereas now you can pretty much use the AV out of Final Cut, for an external monitor, which is going to keep it moderately in sync, but that's still running as a signal out of your Mac. So now you're able to use the Mac pretty much for any in-out and not have to leverage an external box to manage your sync, which then can keep video and audio significantly more in sync. And this is a big shift for editors, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'll also say this, just as a disclaimer. And I said earlier, we'll come back to sync and color. We're going to do that right now. Sync is relative, okay? I have a great story. I knew a guy once who worked on the U2 Zoo tour, early 90s. And he told a story about how their manager would come to the lighting guy and he'd go, hey, on Bullet the Blue Skies, when you hit the 9 lights and the whole audience lights up, you're 2 frames too early. It's like, huh? It's like, yeah, push it back 2 frames. Like, okay. So he moved it. The next concert, he comes back, he goes, hey, you moved it too far. Move it 1 frame over. And so this went on for multiple shows. And finally, the lighting guy said to him, he goes, can I ask you a question? Where are you in the stadium when you're watching this? And he goes, oh, I'm all over the place. And he goes, you don't get to give me timing cues anymore because you're in a different place. Now, this is not as critical as that, but there are times, there are times when I look at stuff and I'm like, you're not really seeing it perfectly in sync, but I am. And there have been a few times where I've had people go, hey, can you move that frame? I'll go, no, I'm not going to do that. Because it's
I think we've all done that.
Because it's right. You're going to have to trust me. If you want, I'll kick out the timeline. You can watch it on your laptop. Because as it turns out, the most high-end producers I have worked for in my career, probably not yours, Sam, but in my career, if it doesn't look good on their MacBook Pro, it doesn't look good. That's all they care about. That's really all they care about. Does it look good on my MacBook Pro when I play it in QuickTime? And so color is kind of the same thing. I've had people like, can we? And I'm like, trust me, it looks good. I'll send it to you so you can be rest assured. You're going to see it really close. Is it absolutely perfect? No, Zoom's going to screw stuff up.
You're gonna. There's never the same color. I don't even get me go. This will derail everything. I have a lot to say about it, but this is not the place.
But you understand there is a level of trust that you have to develop with somebody, and usually it takes one export. Watch this, get back to me, and then we won't have this conversation again. Okay? It's good. Trust me, it's good. Now, is it horrible? Is it a stretch for them to understand that it's in sync or it looks pretty good? No, it's not. It's really good. Is it perfect? It's never going to be perfect. It's really good.
So I would actually recommend just a simple piece of advice for a mission critical client is to have them watch it on a modern iPad or iPhone is probably the best possible device. Those are the best tuned screens where if you want to trust their opinion, don't let them watch it on a fucking television. Have them watch it on a modern iPhone or iPad, or then tell them to go get one if they want to make any color statements.
Who hurt you, Sam? Yeah. That's all I want to know.
So many people, Jace. I don't even want to talk about it. Like it's the level of if you want, I can do a whole thing on color and who hurt me. And there's a lot of trauma there.
I mean, I can feel it through the screen right now. So I'm seeing a bunch of cool stuff, but I'm going to go a little bit more nerdy for a second. And the reason why is I see an opportunity, but I also see some problems in my current workflow, right? The opportunities, I think you spoke already for yourself, and I think we can all agree having real-time editing solution. By the way, you taught me something, which is I'm never going to screen share again. I have the gear here to route through my setups, and I'm just going to do it that way from as a camera. So thank you for that. But the thing I have a question for you is relevant to content security, right? And that's a phrase that's coming up more and more often in my universe, where we work with all the major studios, and they don't want us having footage locally on our computers. Like we have to remote into their servers and basically edit off of their servers. And how is there a way that you could hack together a solution to still facilitate your workflow if you're having to do that? Because the latency, I'm sure everybody on this call has done remote editing before, where you're editing off a remote computer. It's like soul crushing. It's terrible. So how do you do that daisy chaining a remote to remote?
Can you see the media on your computer, on your display?
I can see that. Yes, I can.
It's fine. If you can see it, they can see it, because you're just gonna scrape your screen and share it as a webcam.
Yeah. So do you have an experience with Teradici and Jump Desktop? Have you had to do that?
No, I don't play that game. No, I just have. I don't deal with clients that are that sophisticated. I do kind of bargain.
Yes, oddly, I don't find them to be that sophisticated, because if they were that sophisticated, they wouldn't ask people to work that way. But that's my like 2 cents. The preciousness, I think, about some of it, I think is a little bit questionable. However, that's probably a question for Jace. But yeah, I've had to deal with the latency bug. The problem is just inconsistent internet and delivery of all this stuff, which can be aggravating. But Jace, why don't you, you should probably drive from the sense of, like, if you're being forced to work this way, where do you see the holdups being from what Chris is talking about? Because from my understanding, at the very least, if you can get it to work on your screen, then you can share it out via Chris's system. Okay, so we are back after Jace got censored by the powers that be. We have a conspiracy theory in action. I'm just going to jump to the conclusion that they heard him talking and shut him down. And now, Jace, let's see if this happens again, where we ask you to answer the question of you're being forced to work this way.
Oh, yeah.
Why would Chris's workflow of being able to give an out from whatever is screening out of your system, video and audio, through the Stream Deck and through his mixer, why would that interfere with what you would be doing in a review session?
All right, so give you everything, right? So we do a lot of social media promotion for the top studios on the planet. Think your Paramounts, Disney's, etc. Right? And I'm not saying those are our clients, but let's say they're A tier at that level, right? So one thing that is coming up often, as I just said, is content security, meaning that the footage can never leave our office. Like editors have to be on site. And so if they're not on site, we usually have to have an encrypted hard drive, which I feel like is pretty common, right? Usually with biometrics enabled on it, to where they use their thumb to open the hard drive and we can edit the social media campaigns. But in Chris's specific workflow, what I'm seeing is the footage. I mean, it would have to be local. I mean, he just said it wouldn't have to be, but I mean, I'm looking at the latency issues.
But why does it have to be local, Jay? So my point is simply whatever's good enough for you on your end should be good enough to pass through.
So I'm thinking about this in real time as I'm speaking, because like he just showed us this camera trick, right? And like my old way of thinking as of an hour ago was, okay, this is never going to work because I'm going to have so much latency. But he's saying if I create a virtual camera and I share the video that way, it should alleviate my problems. So I don't know, like Chris, you're gonna have to give me more. I've given you my problem, but like, can you go more into the solution, because you might have solved like a major problem for me.
So, I would go back to, if you can see it, if I can see it on my screen, I can share it with you. Done. If the
At
person
the same frame rate.
Yeah. Because the
And
frame
the audio
rate
is completely good. Yeah.
Completely good is open to interpretation.
Well, I would say the audio shouldn't be
it's
any
good.
different, though. It shouldn't be any different.
No, it's not going to be any different.
Because the thing is, you're taking the signal out of Final Cut, and the signal out of Final Cut is a video and audio signal. So it'd be the exact same signal that you would run via HDMI through the AV out is what you're going to see.
Yeah. So,
and you're not splitting the video and audio. So let's talk about audio for a little bit, if I can segue here, because this is boring me. Well, that's why you're here. This was your idea.
Jace, it's gonna work. It's just gonna work. You're trying. It's gonna work.
I believe you. I believe you. Yeah.
So let me show you. I'm going to give you a very brief overview of how my mixer works. Okay. So I'm using the SoundDesk virtual audio mixer. And what you want to do is you want to come up here and you want to plug all your apps into various channels so that you can mix them and then share them. Now I can either share them out to Zoom, or I can listen to them in my headphones, or I can actually play them on the speakers on my computer here. Okay. Except the problem is that audio devices don't let you do this. And the reason they don't let you do that is you usually have one input and one output device. You see that? I could select one input device and one output device. And I'd like to select, like six or seven different input devices here and 3 different output devices. Well, you can't do that. You get one input, one output. So what you do is by using SoundDesk,
Loopback.
you create Loopback. you create a virtual audio device or an aggregate audio device that is called Sound Desk Input. And it has a bunch of things plugged into it. And then I have one aggregate output device that has a bunch of things plugged into it, and I select it as Sound Desk Audio Output. Okay? Now, it starts to get super detailed because you have to build all of these different modules in Loopback. Okay, this is a six output device, two of which go to Zoom, two of which go to my headphones, two of which go to Zoom, and one of which goes to my speakers. Okay, then I have this one. This is just what I listen to. Okay, this is how I listen to everything, and then this is what I actually send to Zoom. Okay. It gets super complicated. It takes about an hour to go through all of this, but it's absolutely, if this is something that you want to do, it's absolutely something that's worth watching. And then here's a close up of the little these are called a Korg Nano Controller, and I color code some of the faders so that they're easier to just grab in the dark. But it takes about an hour to go through it. It's on Office Hours Global website, a YouTube channel, and
give us that
totally
link.
worth
We're going to put it in. It's in the show notes because we're just going to assume that you sent us the link following the recording.
All right, I will send it to you. Yes, I will.
I'm sitting here, by the way, trying to figure out how I can set up. So I have, like 20 editing machines globally, right? And I'm thinking, how can I turn those into remote workers with this setup and essentially control them from a laptop anywhere on the world? That's what I'm thinking about right now. Is like, I don't necessarily need to have your setup, right? But I can have setups like in my office, and I could remote into them and essentially duplicate the strategy.
You could get a feed. You could get a feed of their setup that's coming in, right? So it's the same concept, really.
Yeah, the only thing that's going to be difficult is how would I map the faders remotely.
You have to map their
difficult.
faders. So you have to get their faders in to get the output out correctly.
Yeah.
But if you can get their output into a feed, you can share that feed anywhere.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I want to do this now. I want to do this so badly.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about now. I'm just a simple little editor guy. But the idea of gathering audio.
Let me simplify it for you, actually, Chris, is your setup works from any computer setup if you think about your setup that way, and it can be shared out to anyone else. So Jace just needs that feed shared out to him, and he's the central repository for that feed. He moves over to a camera, switches the camera, and then reshares it however he wants.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So to give you more, right? Like I this is random, but I have 7 television networks in India. So if I could like remote into my editing stations in India and like control them with this type of setup, like that would be incredibly valuable. That would be very interesting.
You can.
So
if you can remote in, but Chris, I Jace, you can remote in and grab whatever monitor you want, or that monitor can just be shared out to you in a permanent way, and you get that feed. And so you're always getting that feed, but then you could remote in and do whatever you want, maybe from a different monitor. So it's just really about how you set up your screens and you set up your outputs.
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm going to probably stay up all night now, Chris. I blame you. I'm not going to sleep this evening.
To be clear, because this conversation is morphing a little bit, I am not talking anything about controlling remote computers. What I'm talking about is sharing my screen and my audio remotely. So if you want to
extrapolating that, we are extrapolating your perspective from your client side into how Jace can basically hijack anybody's setup to then get their screen feed out and make that reshareable, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, literally, like what you've created in a weird way is a more steroided out version of like an AWS virtual machine, like in terms of like how, you know, you can spin up a Mac Studio essentially in the cloud now on AWS. It's awesome. But the problem with it, it doesn't have all the peripherals that, you know, you're showcasing right now. So I could technically get any editor I want to edit on Final Cut Pro in the cloud right now. But the problem is I'm going to have a lot of the issues that you were talking about with like creating virtual cameras. But if I had a machine localized, go ahead.
Think about this. So if you just literally had each one of them configure their machines according to Chris's system to send out a perpetual Zoom room, right? That was then accessible to you. And then you could just zoom in however you wanted, right? And you knew that Zoom room was going to affect the feed from that setup in a certain way. You then have a perpetual live feed out, you know, just set up. All you have to do is set it up once.
Yeah. Chris, I just want to give you major props, right? And for the people that are listening, if you're just listening, this is an episode that you need to watch. So go to the YouTube channel and watch what the mad scientist Chris Fenwick has created. Because the reality is, right, is like this could spin out in so many different ways, man. Like the way you're using it's already brilliant. Right, it's already brilliant, but I can see so many use cases outside of Final Cut. I really could. Like, you could create, oh my God, you could create so many different use cases for this. Like, this is the workflow. I'm not going to call it a new workflow. This is the workflow from here on out. Like, this is awesome.
Wow, I wish I understood what the hell you were talking about, but that sounds awesome.
You're the one that created it. Like you're too close to it. You're too close to it. That's what it boils down to. Yeah.
All I'm doing is sharing my screen and audio with you in a way that's easily controllable.
You hacked the system though, and the problem is you got around a feed issue that pretty much other people have not figured out how to do cleanly. So this is so that's the. I'm just giving you props. That's all.
Well, thank you. I'd like to point out another thing. There's a bit of convoluted confusion here, where I'm actually doing this on two computers. One computer is doing all the broadcasting, and one computer is doing all the editing. I used to do this on one computer up until about a year and a half ago, there's some advantages to using two computers. There's some advantages to using one computer. But whereas I am currently taking and I'm using the Mac OS to mirror and rescale my primary display. See, a lot of people tell you you just have to edit in 1080p. And I don't know if you've ever tried to do that, but that's not the way grown-ups edit, okay? It's just not. So I edit on a 5K display. I scale it down to 1080p. I let the OS do that. And I take it through the ATEM. It turns it into a webcam. Boop, ba-doop. Put it into OBS. That's one way to do it. If you run OBS, again, can't remember what that stands for. If you run OBS on your edit computer, okay? I would at least use two displays, put the OBS monitor on another display. You can, one of the types, so I'm using OBS to grab my iPhone. I'm using OBS to grab my webcam. I'm using OBS to grab the ATEM, which pretends to be a webcam. But I can also use a screen capture feature in OBS. And when I had OBS on the edit computer, I would actually use the screen capture. So like, for example, I'll show you. If I hit this button, I'm showing you, I'm trying to find the episode where I'm talking about the stuff. So here's my my editor. Actually, let's go back to the timeline. So here's my editor. Again, this button is my webcam.
Now, Chris, we're almost out of time here, and I got one more thing to encapsulate. So where are we going here? Just try and put
quickly. So this, no, not this. This, sorry, this is a capture from using the
the screen capture capability built into OBS. So you can use OBS, you could download it for free, say, select my thing, boop-a-doo, you have to make it a scene, and inside a scene, you put a source. Maybe, okay, after Goldner's on the show, I'll come back and I'll teach everybody how to use OBS.
Sounds like a plan. Jace, I got one little cap for you to try, right? One Zoom room link that you're going to make, right? You get at least 4 of your edits in, but think about this from a big picture workflow standpoint. One perpetual Zoom room link where each feed is showing up as a participant in this Zoom room link. So you've got each of your systems set up this way, going into a single Zoom. That is one link that you always leave open. They're running there, and then you can then remote in to whichever one you want, and you just pin the one and isolate the one that you want to deal with.
The problem with that's a great idea. There's a problem with it. I'm fairly certain that when you request remote control via Zoom, now maybe there's another way to remote control.
No, he was not going to do it via Zoom. He's not going to request.
Never mind.
He's not going to remote in via Zoom. He's going to remote in another way. He's going to control through a different interface, but he just has the perpetual Zoom room open with each of these feeds always in it.
Dude, oh my God. There's no practical way like my company will let me do this. They'll tell me to calm down, but I'm going to do it for like a day. I'm going to do it for like a day just to make everybody mad. Oh my God, that's incredible. Oh yeah, that's going to be awesome. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. And I'll invite you guys to the Zoom if I figure it out. So you can see it.
In a lot of ways, it might even be the closest thing to a real-time 20 edit. You could run a full-on broadcast network out of that signal perpetually if you thought about it.
Okay, that's another conversation for another day, because that's exactly what I do. So we're going to have a conversation about it. Yeah.
So
let's leave it there. Let's leave it there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude, this is incredibly useful, and I'm not just blowing air, man. Like, this is a major problem for me, like literally a major problem. And this one nugget of truth, I'm going to call it the nugget of truth, the Chris Fenwick nugget of truth, is never share your screen, create a virtual camera. And like the second you said that, like literally the light bulb moment happened for me, to where I fundamentally now understand what I've been doing wrong, and I can quite
resolution versus frame rate.
Yeah, I can transform my whole entire remote editing workflow based off that one nugget of truth.
Cool.
Yeah.
Game on. All right. Well, we'll leave it right there. Jace, you want to take us out?
Yeah, guys. First and foremost, Chris Fenwick, the leader of the Elevate guests, right? Who is Alex Goldner at this point? We don't even know. I'm calling him out. He's going to have to come back for round 2. But yeah, we just want to thank you for coming on. We really appreciate you. And today was very eye-opening. And last thing I'll say is, hey, if you're listening to this episode, just stop. Just stop listening. Go and watch the episode. It won't do it justice. So, thank you, Chris, for coming on today.
You're welcome.
All right, guys, that's going to be it for this episode. So we'll catch you next time on Elevate. Peace.